Welcome to Emancipated Studio. Welcome my uncle, Uncle Stu, the old man on the block.
Salute, 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 salute. I just want to thank each and every single one of y'all here tonight. Because as you know, I always say, you could have been anywhere on these YouTube streets, but you came here to hang out with Uncle Stu and be in Uncle Stu's neighborhood. There's so much going on this week. We have a lot that I definitely will be giving commentary to. I just want to make sure that I'm crossing my T's and dotting my I's to respond to what's going on overseas with the Russia invasion and what that exactly means for us here in America. A lot of people may not think it means anything, but it means a whole lot. One of the advice I would give you, make sure you get your gas filled up. That is my one suggestion to you all. Outside of that, we will be discussing those issues later on this week. As you know or may not know, I have a Patreon. So please join the Patreon because there will be a lot of benefits coming through the Patreon that won't necessarily be on the platform in and of itself. So make sure you join the Patreon. So let me give a big shout out to my moderator, Vaughn. As you know, Dr. Thunder is in the back. My girl, Kiana. Dr. Thunder's giving a shout out to Dr. Thunder, to me, and Just Jay. And of course, you know, I couldn't do it without her. Brown Eyes is in the house. And then what y'all may not notice is that we got some people coming in brand new. So y'all got to forgive me if I can't pronounce these names, but I'm definitely going to represent who they are. So I want to give a big shout out. I just happen to have been watching a station that was owned by this lady. Where'd she go? Owned by this lady right here. So I just happened to be watching her YouTube channel, and her people has blessed me to come back and to watch this live. So ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, when they needed the biggest intellectual musician in this place, they called this man. When Nigeria needed some new sound in their country, Ike called this man. So when it came time for Uncle Stu to get the higher learning, he is calling this man. So ladies and gentlemen, give it up for the one, the only, Dr. Thunder.
Hey, how you doing?
Doing well, sir. Doing well. You know, your background scenery reminds me of when I had sports up here. His background got about 20 different monitors, 2,000 computers. You would think he was running a gaming channel, but he runs a sports channel. I'm looking at your background going, well, you got all these monitors, all this music. I said, boy, I got to step up my studio. All I got is books.
Nothing wrong with that.
You know, I love my books. I love my books. I love my books. Well, I want to thank you for coming here tonight and blessing me with your knowledge, your wisdom, and your understanding, so that people know who Dr. Thunder is, you know, because they'll be thinking, Dr. Thunder, was he about to dance? It's like, nah, that's not that kind of thunder. So where did you get the name Dr. Thunder from?
Okay, so so my dad, he's got nicknames for all of his kids. I have dozens of nicknames. Of my, but Thunder is the only one that you'll know about. Uh, but that was a nickname that I got when I was a kid. It's something that stuck, um, and was used for marketing my music career. I grew up in the country, and in the house that was made in, I don't know, early 1900s, 1920, 1930, something like that. It
Mhm.
was a renovated farmhouse, and the floors were very hollow. And so, as a 5-year-old running around in the house, it's quite thunderous. Thump, 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 thump. And so, there you go. I was called Thunder from henceforth and forevermore. And then,
Forevermore.
yeah, and I went straight through college to my master's degree,
Mhm.
uh, and but I didn't have any plans at that point in time to go back and get a doctorate. Um, I was a tenured professor at Ohio State before I even decided that I wanted to go back and do a doctorate. So it was about 14 or 15 years after uh, I had completed my master's degree that I decided to go back and complete a doctorate. And so that doctorate was completed in 2019. And so I just
Congratulations. Let me
basically,
give you a clap for that.
yeah. So I rebranded all of my stuff when I finished the doctorate. I rebranded all the sort of Sean Thunder Wallace stuff to Doctor Thunder, which is pretty punchy. And although we know that black folks like to use doctor in front of their name, we also know that most of the time they're not actually doctorates. Uh, don't actually usually have doctorates, but I actually do. So that's Doctor Thunder. Yeah.
And you're a professor of.
Yeah, I am director of jazz studies at the Ohio State University, professor of jazz saxophone there, and yeah, I mean, I've the the sort of branding that I've been using, which is very descriptive about the sort of order of development and how I've evolved, is musician, professor, and social commentator.
You know, being a college professor is not something that should be taken lightly. And let's give you the praise. Ohio State is not a college that is your average college. So you're teaching some very well educated students already just being able to get into your college. So your humility alone is mind boggling. There's a lot of people who wouldn't have had your humility, So I just want to give you that praise and that credit because you're definitely teaching at an awesome university, and to be in the field that you're in is not something that people should take lightly.
Oh well, thank you, uh, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm mostly interested in, I've never really been into titles, and
Hmm.
I'm not particularly comfortable, uh, toot my own horn, as it were. I've learned how to be a little more assertive in that way over the last few years, because if you won't celebrate your own success, if you won't, then you can't expect anybody else will.
Right.
um, so so some of that is just from a sort of practical sort of perspective. If I I'm an introvert, and so any sort of kind of sales, kind of selling yourself, that kind of stuff, that is not the kind of stuff that is native to me. It's not the kind of stuff that I'm interested in doing. I like to just let the work speak for itself, and if people dig it, then they dig it, and That's kind of that's I just keep it nice and easy.
What is your undergrad in, and what is your master's in?
Yeah, so all of my degrees are music degrees.
Okay.
My undergrad was a Bachelor of Arts degree with it was a major in music, and the minor was comparative religion. My master's degree was saxophone performance with a cognate and composition, and my doctorate is saxophone performance with a cognate and composition.
You hit a subject that is very near and dear to my heart, and that's that comparative religion.
Yeah.
I majored in apologetics when I did my undergrad, and I just kept on studying apologetics. I just loved it. I loved it. When you study philosophy, other theologies, and then know how to really defend your faith, it's awesome. It's
Yeah,
awesome.
when I was my first full-time job, and this was when I completed my when I completed my master's degree,
Mm.
was a band director and pastor's assistant
Mhm.
at a church in Kalamazoo. Pastor Joel Brooks,
Okay.
still very, very good friends. He's matter of fact, he just sent me a message earlier last week checking on me. But he's a really it was the first time that I felt pastored, honestly,
Mm.
because when I grew up, the kind of church that I was in, just the way that they sort of moved, the way that the pastoring was done, it wasn't really focused at the kinds of things that were going to be beneficial to me. But it was really the first time that I felt pastored, and we had a lot of very meaningful conversations. I actually taught an apologetics class at that church. Um, I I grew up in church, but I didn't really start getting serious about it until I was about 19.
Okay.
And that was brought on by a pretty devastating breakup.
Mm.
And I mean, I could go into detail
Yeah, I
about
mean,
the breakup,
yeah,
but
you can, but I'm gonna ask you, who would you say would be being that you said that he because you gave me a lot. Lord, let me take a deep breath. I'm the one who got to get calm now. Um,
Mhm.
Before we go into the breakup, my favorite theologian is Tertullian and Saint Augustine.
Okay,
Um,
yep.
Tertullian only because he's the founder of the whole. If we look at our true doctrine, he's really the founder of that true doctrine. And Saint Augustine is just my man. I mean, I just love some Saint Augustine. Who would you say
Mm.
your favorite theologians in that study would be?
Well, it depends on the sort of stream that you're
Okay.
talking about. So I'll give you a few names that I first got. Uh, and once I got into them, then I kind
Right.
of started going backwards
Okay.
historically. But the first guy I really got into was uh, Josh McDowell,
Okay.
and he had a book called Evidence That Demands a Verdict.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
and then he had another book called A Ready Defense. And A Ready Defense was like a thick, sort of a almost like a collection of several of the books that he had. And I
Right.
used to walk around with that book and was all tattered. I was all in that book. I'll tell you, growing up, I was really very. Um, I had a lot of questions,
Mm-hmm.
and the questions that I was asking were not being answered in a satisfactory manner. Um, Often was the case that when I would ask questions, they say, "Well, because God says to do it." So, well, because it says it in the Bible. Say, well, where did the Bible come from? Well, why you keep questioning stuff? You got to have faith. So even basic questions about the formation of the canon of Scripture,
Mm-hmm.
um, where the Bible came from, how they decided which books were going to be canonized and which books would be thrown out. What was the rationale, the philosophy around that? All of that kind of stuff was, no no information was had,
Right.
and so that became very frustrating. And I think eventually that it got to the point where I started kind of falling away from that, and it didn't make a lot of sense to me. But what happened when I went through that breakup, and it was with my high school sweetheart. She went away to school, and I did not. And so basically, some dirty macking was going on because she ended up with some dude. She got married to the same dude that was supposedly her friend, and that he was talking sweet nothings into her ear. How much better he's going to be than me, and how could all of that kind of stuff. And then she ends up getting married to this dude. But anyhow, that's a separate a separate story.
I like that. I mean, hey, we can talk about that too. Yeah.
But the long and short of it is that it was a really like I said, it was a really hard breakup. Over a period of 2 weeks, I don't know, I probably lost 20 pounds. I was a wreck. I was just having a real hard time. Was really depressed, and and a lot. And the thing is what's interesting, not interesting. It's too bad that there is this view that men don't have feelings, or that our feelings are of no consequence, that we're somehow less than human, that we, we're not compassionate. You can hit us and it doesn't hurt, and all of that kind of stuff. And that's just been the whole time growing up. It hasn't been until over the last, I don't know, maybe 3 years that I even knew that there was such a space where men were able to actually express the way that they thought about things, to talk, discuss with frankness, issues that they've had in relationships, to talk about some of the sort of common experiences that they've had with women, and all of that kind of stuff. Because anytime in the past where I would even try to have any of those conversations, period, it just fell on deaf ears. It was a lot of gaslighting. Even the men would act like, they didn't know what I was talking about. And so that made that breakup quite difficult, because there wasn't really anywhere I could go to have a conversation about that. And other than, going to church, where we know that, especially these days, church has really leaned in a particular direction, very much influenced by the feminist movement. And so a lot of the things that would be commonplace in church, stuff that would actually focus on issues that men face, support groups for men, all of that kind of stuff. There was some of that, but not nearly the kind of support I think that would have been, probably healthy for me at that time. But even though, I found a sort of rebirth in my faith, and because of that, I was like, man, I got to do something. And so me and a group of friends were reading the Bible, and we're like, oh man, it says that you need to be out here on street corners preaching the gospel like this. And so we just got this idea that we needed to be the John the Baptist or something of this generation. We just got this idea, but we didn't really know anything. I mean, we had Bibles, but that's it. Right. And so I remember having these 4 spiritual law tracts, right? And there was a pinball. There was a pinball place on Michigan State campus called Pinball Pete's. I don't even know if it's there anymore.
Okay.
and they had video games and all kind of stuff in there. And so first what we were doing is we were actually going into the place and we were trying to catch people right when they finished playing a video game. We'd act like we were playing video games, and then we'd try to hand them the track. Of course, we got kicked out. Right.
Right.
But then we discovered that, guess what? The sidewalk, that is that's a public, property. So I'm allowed to stand on the street. So basically what we started doing is handing those out there, and we started developing a sort of series of questions to get people talking. One of the favorite questions was, what do you think about the Bible?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of where my love for apologetics started, is with boots on the ground, as it were. And so it was like, look, people are saying all kind of stuff. They're asking all kind of questions, and we don't know what the heck we're talking about. So we need to start studying and figuring out what's going on. So I found out about Josh McDowell.
Okay.
And then through Josh McDowell, Ravi Zacharias, William Lane Craig, and really through Ravi Zacharias, Malcolm Muggeridge, C.S. Lewis.
Yeah, I have a bunch of C.S. Lewis books.
Yeah, and so and a host of others, Dallas Willard.
Yeah,
a host of others.
Yeah,
and then I started looking to history more, because I became unsatisfied with certain ways that Protestants sort of have a sort of limited understanding of church history.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, when I started asking some of those questions about what is the church, I mean, there's 30,000 denominations, Protestant denominations, 30,000. Right. And so I'm like, okay, so who's right? And how do you know? And doesn't the Bible say that there's, so denominations would be, doesn't the Bible even say divisions are not, are not right? So what's going on with this?
Right.
And when you ask the question, what is the church? You get wildly different responses to that question. And so I started to really look at the early church. And honestly, I converted to Orthodox Christianity. So if anybody understands,
Eastern or Western?
Yeah, so Orthodox, Eastern Orthodox.
Eastern. You know what? Let me give you a clap. I totally understand why.
Yeah.
I totally get it, because just to share experiences, although there's certain authors that I'm going to have to do some research, others right on target. But when you hit the history part, that's the exact part that got me. So I also started in that path, coming out of college of going Eastern Orthodoxy. I don't usually explain Eastern Orthodoxy, although I try to tell people to go to look at that aspect of it. So I love the fact that you are Eastern Orthodoxy. That's that's a conversation you and I got to have on and off the platform, because you've just excited me on that. And a lot of people, okay, so that they're not hearing my authority, can you give a brief synopsis or a brief understanding of Eastern Orthodoxy versus Western Orthodoxy?
Okay, so in the one Holy Catholic and Apostolic Church. So this is a phrase that you find in the Nicene Creed. And the Nicene Creed is the sort of the official sort of mission, vision statement, whatever you want to say, of the church, of the one church. So in 1054, the so-called Great Schism, and this is when the Catholic Church, the Roman Catholic Church, split from the Eastern Orthodox Church. All right. So at that time, it wasn't called Eastern Orthodox Church. It was just called the One Holy Catholic and Apostolic Church, right? But basically, the nutshell is there were 5 patriarchates, and the Roman Church was one of the 5 patriarchates. And basically, what happened is, over some disagreements about what the papacy was, the Romans believed, because their jurisdiction was the largest, they started to believe that that meant that their vote counted more, that they could basically just do things unilaterally, and that was against the the way that the church always operated. And even in the first 7 councils, the first 7 ecumenical councils, you can see that there's very clear language about how the church is supposed to operate and who gets to decide, and to change something, and all of that kind of stuff.
Right.
And so the Roman Church was acting outside of that authority, outside of that thing. And so basically what happened, that's what began and eventually made permanent the split. Now, with respect to most things doctrinally, most things are similar between the Roman Church and the Eastern Church. There are a few things. There's about 7 or 8 things that are different. One of the things that's different is the Roman Church will have statues, 3-dimensional renderings of historical figures. That's actually seen. I mean, there's some specific language in one of the councils that says not to have 3-dimensional statues, because of the possibility of creating idols. Right? You can go back in the Old Testament with the children of Israel and how they made this golden calf, and of course the golden calf was a 3-dimensional object. And so there were some safeguards put in place to prevent some of that kind of stuff. But that's just one of the things. Of course, we believe in the prayer with the saints. Some people phrase that as praying to the saints. But that's a little bit of a misunderstanding. Protestants always get really up in arms and are uncomfortable with this idea. But black folks know that just this idea of sharing some words with the deceased, grandmother or something, grandmama, I hope you're still watching over me, that kind of thing. That's a very common thing in black culture. And that's really what we're talking about. The Bible talks about the cloud of witnesses, so this cloud of witnesses is ever present, and actually is all day long without the need of sleep, praying on our behalf.
Right.
And Mary, the mother of Jesus, Mary is one of these saints that is ever praying on our behalf. And so it's kind of like if I was to call you on the phone and say, hey man, I'm going through some challenges, I'm having a hard time. Could you pray for me? Right. It's the same idea, except for we're talking about people that have gone on, right? Have passed on. So, and the question is, who do you think would be more effective? Someone that is a saint and is actually in the very presence of God, or somebody that is human like you? Now, they're both effective, but to rule one out for a sort of abstract reason, which was never the case. Again, this is an aspect of it's a byproduct of the Protestant Reformation. One other thing I'll say about orthodoxy. I'll say 2 things. One is the sacraments really matter. The sacraments are important. Okay. So marriage is a sacrament.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's really important. And there is this idea that there are two paths to salvation, two pathways to salvation. One of them is celibacy, and the other one is marriage.
Right.
Those are the only options. There are
Right.
no other options, right? Triple digit body count, that's not a road to salvation, right?
Mm-mm.
So that's it. Celibacy and marriage. Both of them are sufficiently difficult as to create a certain level of maturity, spiritual maturity in the
Mm-hmm.
person. It's like being refined by fire. It's not supposed to be easy, right? These days with marriage, people get divorced for all kinds of frivolous reasons.
Right.
Okay. And we know that 80%, 70, 80% of these divorces are being initiated by women now. And
That's
the
right.
main reason that they're saying is, I'm not happy. Irreconcilable differences, so called. This is not grounds for divorce. It's
Let's
not
talk.
grounds for divorce.
Let's talk about it. I got another question in my head, but
Sure.
I want to talk about that because let me tell you what I'm also gathering in the midst of this conversation. I think what's also missing with that point is that everybody also doesn't recognize that Eastern Orthodoxy, since a lot of people like to put color in the midst, that's as black as you can get. Because you look at the true Church of Corinthian, that was in Central North Africa. They ruled for
Right.
500 years. Then you have the Church of Mark, which also ruled where it all comes out of. Again, black rule. We also have to remember that Tertullian, who converted the Bible into Latin, was African.
Mm-hmm.
And then everybody's not recognizing that when they say Father, Son, Holy Spirit, that came from Tertullian. That was not a original Eurocentric theology. And a lot of the things that is written in Scripture, at least in the Eastern Orthodoxy, are the very things that people can even find in so-called, and I don't want to say so-called, in many African spiritual understanding. That's why it was easy for Africans to convert to Christianity. And even that word Christianity wasn't used back then, but we're using it now for this discourse. Was easy to convert because the languages was the same. The mannerisms was the same. We find even in the Old Testament, them understanding ancestral spirituality. So,
So the Latin would be, yeah. So the Latin Vulgate is what you're referencing,
mm-hmm.
and the Vulgate that's sort of the Roman Old Testament, as it were.
Yeah.
The Septuagint, that's the Eastern, and it's in Greek. So here's the story about the Septuagint, which is very, very. It's an interesting story. Most folks are not aware of this. I mean, I've not met many Protestants that understood this, or I mean, but there's not any real reason to dig this far into history,
right?
But there's a council called the Council of Jamnia.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Council of Jamnia. Now, Council of Jamnia was not a Christian council; it was a Jewish council. Okay. Now, let's put a pin in that.
Okay.
King Ptolemy. He had a translation made of the Bible called the Septuagint of the Old Testament. He was translating the Hebrew into Greek. And the way that he did this is that he hired 70 scholars. That's why it's called Septuagint. 70 linguistic scholars. But the thing was, and they were all far distances away.
Mm-hmm.
The deal was, though, that they were not allowed to communicate to each other.
Mm-hmm.
So he wanted to see how they would translate themselves. And this was seen as a miracle and confirmation that the Greek was to be the language of their canon of scripture, and that the translations were exactly the same. Okay, so imagine having 70 folks translate something, and to have it come back and as dense as the as that canon is, to have no differences. It was seen as a miracle.
Right.
So all of Judaism switched to the Greek. Okay. So for instance, when Apostle Paul says all scripture, he's talking about the Septuagint. And this is apparent also because of the way that he quotes scripture.
Right.
Because the Masoretic, the Hebrew, does not say things in the same way that the Greek does.
Correct.
Okay. And so he's clearly quoting the Greek and not the Hebrew. Okay. So there's that. So what happened was that there was a Council of Jamnia. Now this happened after the time of Christ. The early Jewish, the early Christian liturgy was but a Christianization of the Jewish liturgy. Okay, so all they did, because remember Jesus says, we're not abolishing, we're not putting away the law, we're fulfilling the law. He was a fulfillment, not to put away. So the early church looked like a Jewish liturgy, but it was a Christianized version of that.
Right.
Okay. Still the same language, right? Because that was a shared component. So now we're talking. So it's all Greek. So the Council of Jamnia was convened as a way to make it harder, more difficult for the Jews to convert to Christianity, because it was very easy. It was a direct pathway, right? Because the service even was the same.
Was the same, right?
It was very similar. The language was the same. So they were like, look, we need to go back to the Hebrew. Okay. So when they went back to the Hebrew, they also dropped out a collection of writings that Protestants call the Apocrypha.
Right.
Some call the deuterocanonical texts. Okay. And now, part of the reason that we know that this is actually true is that to this day, there are Jewish sects in Africa, in particular Northern Africa, that did not get that message. They didn't get the message that they were supposed to switch back. They still use the Septuagint, which has those other books in it. Also, when you look at the 1611, is it 1611 King James?
Yeah, I don't even read. I don't even deal with that book.
Well, but check it out. But understand that book has the deuterocanonical texts in it. It has the Apocrypha in it. So my point is that this decision to throw out the Apocrypha or deuterocanonical texts, that Protestants have made, seems to have been because of that Council of Jamnia, which the purpose of which was not a Christian purpose,
right?
And even early Protestants still were recognizing that entire the entire book, and not throwing out certain books. Folks also don't know that Martin Luther wanted to throw out several New Testament books.
Right.
Several New Testament books he was not comfortable with. He wanted to throw them out of the new Protestant New Testament canon.
Yeah, he didn't even like the Book of John. That's the irony.
Right?
He had a lot of debates. I mean, when I talk, it's kind of hard to talk to certain people unless they've had a certain length of study and background.
Yes.
So that's why I was able to be quiet and just sit back and enjoy this part of the conversation. I want to go back to two things you said. I have an understanding when you say your pastor was the first time you've actually been pastored, and I give honor to my pastor.
Yeah.
I've been under his tutelage. I think I've been a Christian. See, I'm 54. I got saved at night at 29. And we just had a conversation just the other day. We're still praying for him because he lost his wife. My blessed overseer, his wife, his right hand, his left hand. She was everything. And one of the beautiful conversations that we have is about the manosphere. And so I get it. And I try to want to reproduce what he has. He has watched me go from, being his next door neighbor in Brooklyn, all the way to traveling with me to North Carolina, all the way to dealing with me even till, last night.
Yep.
And to have that kind of relationship is unimaginable. It is unimaginable. And it sometimes hurts me that other men, and I'm going to speak for men right now, that other men don't really get that type of relationship. And to hear you say he did that for you, can you kind of give me that look, what that is? What did he do? How was his actions? How did he was able to grab you in that moment, that brokenness, and be able, and I'm using that word brokenness a little bit loosely, but in that time, and then be able to say, you're still a man, let's get up, let's go.
Well, we're all broken. Right. So now I'll say, so I must have been like a sophomore or junior in college, and I still hadn't really found a church. I had, as I said, I had started this evangelism sort of ministry, and I was leading a Bible study amongst folks that, college friends and stuff. But I still hadn't really found a church. And I can't remember if he came to a concert or something and he saw me, and he approached me and said, "Hey, come on, bring your horn, come on to church." Or if it was that I heard about the church and I came, and then I met with him after the service, and then he told me to bring the horn. So, but either way, when I met him, I had no idea that he was a musician. And matter of fact, he wasn't even playing at the church. Basically, it was really kind of scaled down. And yeah, I'll let you go ahead and acknowledge the super chatter.
All right. Thank you for the $9.99 super chat. Appreciate you, Sir Hill. Speaks is in the building. Thank you.
Yeah. But I showed up to church with the horn, and I just, he just had me come up and play. Then I started coming to rehearsals and stuff. And then before I knew it, he had offered me sort of a part-time band director's position, and it was a critical time for the church because the church, which was, bursting at the seams, we were in a sort of renovated office building. And so we were doing 3 services on Sunday plus a midweek service, and all of the services were totally packed. So we were, so they had purchased an old Kroger's. Kroger's is what is Kroger's? It's a grocery store.
Supermarket. Yeah, I have one across the street.
Yeah. So they had purchased a vacated old Kroger's and totally renovated it and created a super modern style church with sweep seating and a perfect platform. It was designed for music.
Wow.
Right. And so, I started assembling a band And I was since I was still a student at um, Western Michigan University, where I did my undergrad and my master's. I was bringing in really, really great student musicians to sort of complement the sort of more seasoned kind of gospel sensibility kind of musicians that were already at the church. It was a black church. The church that I grew up in was kind of a sort of a mixed kind of church, which was kind of a weird thing. It was kind of split down the middle, half black, half white, and the pastors were they were a married couple, and it was a weird thing because the woman was actually the senior pastor, and her husband was like the so-called care pastor,
Right.
and that was like but it also explains why I never really felt pastored at that church,
Right.
and really felt because that was just not. It just
Yeah,
wasn't congruent.
it was imbalanced. Yeah.
It just didn't fit, and
Right.
so and now, granted, they preached from the Bible. There was a lot of reading scripture in the service, and all that stuff was very positive. It was kind of a word of faith kind of church. So they were kind of into that sort of proto, what am I trying to say? Proto prosperity stuff. It wasn't full blown that, but it was kind of like on the edge of that. Blab it, grab it, proclaim it, claim it,
Name
all
it,
that
and
stuff.
claim it. Yeah.
Yeah, all of that kind of stuff. So they were all about that.
Speaking into existence.
Yeah, all of that kind of stuff, and so, and I had a lot of issues with, I didn't realize that I did, but I had issues with that. It was part of the reason why I needed something else. And so, in addition to this guy being, it turns out that he was a touring keyboard player, and he was a fine musician. And so he kind of we understood each other from that perspective. There was a mutual kind of respect there. And then, there was just this sort of kind of, so my dad is not a Christian. My dad has been, above and beyond, he's like the greatest dad on earth, all of that kind of stuff, but he's not a Christian. My mom was the Christian. She was the one that had us going to church. Now, my dad never tried to knock me out of my faith or something. He never tried to convince me that I shouldn't be going to church. He never did any of that, though that wasn't what he wanted to do.
So you're a little Timothy then. Timothy had the same. So
right.
Name for you would always be, oh, that's Timothy, y'all. But continue.
So yeah, but being able to have certain kinds of conversations were really kind of critical, important for me at that time. And so, I've actually had Pastor Brooks. I've actually had him on. Let's see here. I did a panel. I pulled together a panel for O'Shea Duke Jackson on his channel. We did a couple sort of Black Manosphere meets the Black Church kind of things.
Right.
And so he was one of the pastors that I brought. Also another pastor that's from Columbus where I live. Right. And then I've had a couple preachers' kids like this. And so we had a pretty lively conversation. That we did two of those. I also did another one of those kind of Black Church meets the Manosphere kind of things on Bernard Riley's channel. And he also was one of the panelists for that. And so he has an unusual story. He is an unusual kind of pastor, because usually the case in our community with the Black church, what the demographic usually is in our churches.
Right.
There's not very many men, right? It's mostly women. And at that, it's mostly single mothers. Correct. That's just basically what the demographic is. Right. And so what happened is Pastor Brooks, he inherited a church that was like 85-90% women. And when he came in, he fired all the folks on the board. He said, and it was mostly women on the board. He fired them all, and he put men on the board. And then they started focusing on stuff specifically for men, stuff that was going to build men. Now, of course, he lost some folks,
Right.
but the church exploded. The church got to 50-50.
Wow.
As far as the demographic,
Good.
which is unheard of. And it was such a big deal that the local paper did an article on it. And of course, but once the word got out that there were men there, what happened.
Right.
More women showed up. But but that's, I think, part of the reason why that was the first time I felt pastored, because he was unapologetic about being a man, about being a man's man, about telling men the kinds of things that are going to be critical and important for their development, and not this sort of finger wagging from the pulpit that we tend to get from most black preachers.
Absolutely. And I want to address that, because I'm glad you said that. I've always argued, and you just confirmed my argument. I thank you. I always argue, men is going to follow men. If you are a real man, you're going to get that kind of following. But you have a lot of men that ain't getting that following. And I keep saying to women over and over, if you're sitting in a church where men is not coming, then the man you're looking at is not a man. Not the man. I'm sensitive in that, but it's not too sensitive, because I follow a male pastor who is strong in his own masculinity, who is strong in his own fatherhood, who is strong, and that's what he is. His church has always been more male to female. When I was in North Carolina, I seen the same thing. I can name 3 pastors there in Greensboro, North Carolina, that had a strong male following, meaning young 20-somethings was being mentored, and they understood how to work, how to dress, how to get organized. Churches that was taking crackheads and making them whole again.
The thing is that when we make these statements about the sort of en masse, what the statistics show, the fact that the folks that we're talking about are the minority, but they do exist. They do exist. There are these examples. Another example of a real masculine shoot from the, hit you right between the eyes is Geno Jennings.
Never heard of him.
Yeah. He's got a church in Philly.
Okay.
And this church is packed. It is packed. And this dude it's like bringing back the old fire and brimstone preaching.
Okay.
Where he is talking about a lot of the social ills, a lot of the social problems we have. He will actually call women out for wearing form-fitting stuff and wearing, what is he called, raptor claws, and all the fake this, that, and everything else, showing up to church with their Bible, with their form-fitting stuff and their, boobs hanging out and all this kind of stuff. He's shooting right between the eyes. He's calling folks out for, illegitimacy, the out of wedlock birth rate, and all of that kind of stuff. And because he talks about this with regularity and unapologetically, his church is overfull.
Right.
And it's overfull with men. It's overfull with men and women. See, because that is the criticism that some folks try to make for that. They say, well, but if you're too assertive, if it's too masculine, then you're going to scare the women away. No, you're not, because if men are there, then women are going to come.
Absolutely.
And that's a fact. That's an absolute fact. If you want to grow your church, focus on men.
That's right. Because this platform is whole purpose is to elevate and promote men while trying to teach women how to love the man they want to be with. Yeah. I am unapologetically a man. I am unapologetically Black. I unapologetically love my people, but I unapologetically love the male strength and let's rise. I come from a military background. My spiritual head is all man. When I say we talk manosphere stuff, he can tell me things about Kevin Samuels. He can go into O'Shea. He could go into Red Pill. He can go into everything that you want to go there. And I'll even drop a little nugget. Right now, I am going to do a live stream, and it's going to come from the book of Isaiah, chapter 1 and 4, I believe it is. You know, and that scripture is real simple. There will come a time that there will be 7 women for 1 man.
Oh yeah, right.
You know, because I'm here to tell women, you can go ahead and do all that you want to do. You can, but the results is here. You can go follow all these female leaders that's telling you to do whatever. You can follow all these weak men that's telling you to do. But I got a scripture right here, and this can't be denied. You're not going to be able to deny what it's saying. Why? Because I don't even want to go into it. When I do it, I'll make sure you get a signal. So if you got to jump on to help me out and add to it, you can. But yeah, we're going to deal with that next week. Definitely.
That was my man. By the way, that's my man, Dr. Doug.
Thank you, sir, for the $2 super chat. Incel Stu, glad to see 2 likes. But
yeah, you know, that is he's my regular collaborator. We do a show on my channel called Thunder's Thoughts on Thursdays at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The show that we did last night was called The Bamboozling of the Black Male Image.
I saw I didn't get a chance to see it, but I saw the thumbnail. So yeah, I definitely got to check it out.
Well, unfortunately, only about an hour of it is actually can be viewed now because it was a copyright issue. It got struck down a couple times during the stream. And I thought that because of the blackface on the thumbnail that was causing some issues, but actually what it was is that I guess it's Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers was not having us, even though it was totally. I mean, you know, I was stopping it frequently, fair use, all that, but they still had an issue. But it was still a good show, and there's still, I think, enough of it to kind of get an idea of what we were talking about. But I was going to say I did a one of these, I call them struggle streams. Mm-hmm. There are these videos I do in my car.
Right.
Usually you're early in the morning. Yeah. And one of them I did was called Even God Gave Them Over, but Simps Are Still Trying to Save. And the text was Romans chapter 1, verse 18 and on. And of course, you know what they're talking about with the reprobate mind and everything, disobedient to parents, all of that language in there. And you know, that's one of the issues that I think men have, is that we want to rescue. That's part of our nature, is to want to rescue, we want to protect. And the thing is that we're in a time period now, and there's never been a time like it is now. We're in a time period where you actually cannot afford to do that. You cannot do that. You cannot be trying to turn a 304 into a housewife. Look, yes, we know Hosea. We know the book of Hosea. We know that God commanded Hosea to marry a wife of prostitution, and that she kept going and prostituting as even when they were married, and he was commanded to raise the kids as if they were his own.
Mm-hmm.
And he was never allowed to leave. But we need to understand the difference between that, right, which was obviously metaphorical.
It's very metaphorical. Very.
Okay. We need to know the difference between that and being able to, and being willing to just basically turn a blind eye to all kinds of crazy stuff that's going on. I'll tell you, the biggest struggle that I've had in my life, the two things that'll hem men up are money and women. For me, it's been women.
Right.
That's flat. That's 100% flat out God's honest truth.
Right.
It's
right.
been
right.
women. Okay.
Right.
And it's because I have ignored clear signs, clear things. I knew I shouldn't be doing it, but I just did it anyway. And the reason is because, I did a show on Thunder's Thoughts called, was Adam the first simp? And the resounding answer to that question is yes. Adam was the first simp. And that is why all of us have inherited from Adam the tendency to prioritize pleasure over purpose.
I can definitely use it, and I can definitely see it. When you talked about Adam, I talk about the first strong man, which was Job, because when Job's wife said, "Curse God and die," he said, "Thy foolish woman, you want me to do that because those other women would do that." And he was the strength of what it means to stand up. I said today, most men couldn't even do that. They couldn't have a real Job moment versus an Adam moment. I think that's a beautiful comparison. I think that's awesome. That's awesome. We're it doesn't take a lot of prayer. And I just got off the phone speaking with another content creator. And one of the things that we're dealing with is, in this week, if no one recognizes it, the value of a black man don't mean diddly. And when I say this with a boldness. We've had a vice president that don't give a shit about black men. Now they just raised up a Supreme Court justice, don't give a shit about black men. The black female swirlers should be having a party today. They should be having a party today. Then you have a movie on OWN that came out that people are starting to talk about now. Black men ain't, we ain't shit.
Yeah.
So from your vantage point, because I plan to talk about that too, being that black men is unapologetically ain't shit, and we unapologetically is now considered the scum of Americans' earth, why are we still trying to hold on to the black woman? Because, and let me add that caveat. I want black women that's hearing what I am saying is because black men still want the black woman. We just don't want all the foolishness. And I don't know how to break through these foolish women to tell them, hey, black men want you. We just don't want a freaking Lizzo. We don't want you twerking when we take you to a restaurant.
Yeah.
We don't want this. But you keep trying to shove this down our throat. My analogy, you sit up there and you create the perfect burger. you get the organic ground beef. You go get the most organic fruits and vegetables. You set up everything looking nice. You go and get 10 of your friends that all love these beef burgers you created. But you turn around and you set it up in a neighborhood of vegetarians. And the vegetarians tell you, we don't eat meat. But now you go back to your friends cursing out the vegetarians because they don't want to eat your burger, but you did a piss poor job at marketing the product because you brought it to the wrong place. And you blaming the people. That's like you and I as content creators or business owners, we set up the platform, we do all of this stuff, but then we're mad at the people when they don't respond, but they're not responding because we're not giving them the service and the product that they want.
Yeah, so just a couple things. So the whole
Let's go.
So first of all, Kamala is not black. That's the first thing.
Yeah, she's Indian.
Right. She is right. She's Indian. And now what people will do is they'll quickly say, well, but her dad is Jamaican. Yeah. He was an immigrant from India to Jamaica. I mean, his family immigrated from India to Jamaica. Right. And so he was basically Indian also by way of Jamaica. All right. Okay. So that's a thing that folks don't recognize. But either way, if you look at her entire upbringing, it's clearly dominated by her mother. And so her mother's value system, religion, and everything else. All right. Clearly that thing. And she did the typical thing that Indians do, and no shade on Indians, no shade at all. But often is the case. But often is the case that they'll marry a white man. The females will marry a white man. That is a usual thing. Of the options present, if they can't find an Indian man, then their second choice is going to be a white man. And of course, that's what she did. I mean, she's got her daughters, which are his daughters, calling her Mamala. So it gives you a different sort of perspective. And then, so Joe Biden was one of the architects of the 94 crime bill.
That's right.
Right. But Kamala was the boots on the ground.
That's right.
Locking brothers up like crazy, weaponizing the crime bill against black men. Okay.
That's right.
Now, I haven't done any research on this Supreme Court nominee yet. Justice nominee yet.
She is married to a white man, and his brother is a Republican on I think he's a senator. So that lets you know.
Well, but the thing is even if she was married to a black man, the only way that she would be nominated by Joe Biden is if she had a verging on a disdain for black men. Those would be the only black women that would get that opportunity. So even without me not knowing anything, even without me knowing anything about her in particular, and I am going to do my research, so that I can qualify what it is I'm saying. But even without knowing that, I already know what her politics are. I already know what they are. She's going to be a pro-choice. She's going to be, a pro-feminism. She's going to be, she probably even has some articles or something that she's written on stuff like the so-called wage gap. I'm sure that all of that stuff is there. So it's going to be the usual stuff. And you have to ask the question. I mean, there's no question. I mean, we already know what it is. Okay, so that's the first part. The second part is, and I did a live stream. Let's see here. It was called, and this was just a couple days ago. It was yesterday in the morning. Okay. It was called "What Do Black Women, the Black Church, and the Academy Have in Common?" And what I discussed in that video is that I have not been the preference of any of the three of those. That's what's in common. Is I'm not the preference. There is like almost a palpable disdain for who I am, the kind of person that I am, right? Because I'm a black man. So if you look at a significant issue that we have with our women, I did a Thunder's Thoughts called Mate Selection, and it was all about discussing primary issues in why a lot of the good guys end up with nobody, and the women complain that there's no good guys left over, and all this kind of stuff. It's because the tendency is to prioritize swag over substance. All right. Now, when I was growing up, I started playing saxophone when I was 6, and I was totally possessed by it. It was all I wanted to do. I was, when I was in first grade, I played in the 6th grade band. When I was in 2nd grade, I played in the 8th grade band, first chair. When I was in 3rd grade, I played in the high school band. Okay. My first record came out. I started performing professionally when I was 9. My first record came out when I was 14. I opened for Ray Charles when I was 14. Okay. So what I'm saying is, and I've been on television. CBS Sunday Morning did a show on me, focusing on my music and my spirituality. I was on Phil Donahue. The show was called Super Kids of the 90s. I was when I was 19.
Then you must be close to 50.
I'm 47.
Okay.
And
when you start saying certain things, I'm like, okay, this is my generation. He ain't talking to the young.
and I was on BET Jazz Central. All right. So I've done a bunch of stuff in music. I've been laser focused on the music thing, and that's been a priority. So I've been, as AMS says, I've been on my purpose. Okay. But the thing is that if you're really laser focused on your purpose, then often is the case that there's other things that are going to have to lag because they're not important. So stuff like having the latest jeans, having the right walk, having the right stuff that you're going to say, the right rap when you're talking to females, all that kind of stuff. And I'm an introvert. Right. So I have suffered nuclear rejection after nuclear rejection at the hands of black women. Okay. And the thing is that because now I'm married to a black woman.
Right.
And I'm in my 2nd marriage. My first marriage was to a black woman. It's always been my preference. I love everything about black women.
Right.
I love the way they smell. I love the way they look. I love the being able to have those sort of inside cultural conversations with someone that understands it. I love, I don't know. I love a little bit of sass. I love black women. Right. But they have not loved me. I've not been the priority of these women. And I said the same thing about the black church. I love everything about the black church. I'm a church musician. Right. I'm an MD at a church right now. I love the black church. And what it is that I'm about to say is not necessarily about every black church or every pastor, because I just mentioned Pastor Brooks. I just mentioned one that did have my best, my interests at heart and did prioritize me. Okay. But I have loved everything about the black church, how influential the music in the black church has been to the world. Jazz came out of that, R&B, hip hop, everything came out of the early black church musically. Anything with a backbeat came out of the black church,
Right.
right? And so, I have loved the black church. I love the rhythm. I love the preaching. You know, the style of the preaching, the tuning up, the collaboration between the musicians and the preaching at the end of the sermon. All of I mean, I love the black church, but the black church has not loved me. They have not loved me. I mean, and you can just look at the demographics in the black church, and there's evidence just by the virtue of the fact that I'm, you know, that I'm a man, right?
Right.
And then the third thing is the same experience in the academy. Now, I work for a PWI. I'll tell you, there are 20,000 fewer black men in the academy than black females. 20,000 fewer. I'm a tenured professor. I am a unicorn in the academy, especially in PWIs. I am a unicorn. And, you know, I interviewed Minister Japp on Conversations with Dr. Thunder. That episode is called, but is the straight, free thinking black man protected?
Hold on. Let us all marinate on that. Hold on. Let's marinate. Say that one more time for the people in the back, because see, you're about to get it started up in here, and I love every minute of it. Say that one more time for the people in the back.
Yeah, but is the straight, free thinking black man protected?
Don't you think it's sad that we got to define straight, heterosexual? And even then, let's see, are we going to get demonetized? That should say something, but everybody still got their blinders on. But let me continue.
Yeah, and I was mentioned. They were trying to dox me in Elle magazine in reference to the manosphere.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, it's goofy.
I didn't see the magazine, but I heard about it on the streets. Yeah.
But you know, as a professor, it is exhausting. It is exhausting. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. I want y'all do me a favor, Vaughn. Make sure her YouTube channel is dropped in the chat. Ladies and gentlemen, she only has, I think, about 30 more subscribers to go to hit that 1K. Let's go ahead and give my sister. She's been pumping out those reaction videos. And if y'all ever check out her channel, that's a big Kevin Samuels follower. A wife, mother. She's doing her thing. Okay, I'm sorry, Dr. Thunder.
No, that's fine. But it is exhausting. As a faculty member, you know, I am very much aware in every meeting, every interaction, the list of things that I must not raise, the list of issues that I must not raise, because it is totally exhausting.
Your tenure, but I don't want to get your job, and you know. But if you could talk.
Oh, no.
Okay.
Yeah, no. I'm here for the smoke.
Okay.
You know, I mean, you know, I may not have FU money, but I have FU tenure.
I love it.
But the academy was supposed to be one of these places. It was supposed to be one of these places where you can say things that you go wherever the research leads. I mean, so this is an example that I have used. So say, for instance, say you're a scientist, and say in your area, they're all flat earthers. They believe the earth is flat.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But you have developed some sort of approach, some technique to measure the curvature of the earth, which has led you to believe that the earth is actually spherical. Right? Now, as a tenured professor, you can run around and you can tell folks, no, it's spherical. And they can laugh at you if they want to, but they can't get you fired because you don't agree with the rest of them. Right?
Right.
And it used to be that was the way that this thing went, where you could take different political positions, you go wherever the research leads, and all that kind of thing. That's one of the beauties of tenure. Tenure is not supposed to be, I get tenure, now I can coast.
Right.
That's not what it was supposed to be for. It was supposed to be so that you could aggressively continue to pursue truth at all cost.
Right.
That was, that's the point, right? And university, unity in diversity. That's what university means. Unity in diversity.
Right.
And this was the sort of musings on first philosophy. The first philosophers in their sort of creation of the university system, and their envisioning the system, they knew about earth, air, fire, and water, these primary essences. Their desire was to discover the fifth essence, the quintessence, that essence that brought those things together, that was in common between those four essences. That was the thought behind the university. Unity in diversity, the idea that you get all of these folks with all of these different ideas, all of these different perspectives, you get them in the same room and they hash it out and they have conversation. And maybe it's at times it is heated conversation, but you stay in it because you're trying to learn from each other. You're trying to see, that's what it's supposed to be. But that is not what the university system is now. That's not what it is. And I'll tell you a primary reason why I started my Conversations with Dr. Thunder interview series, which I'll be doing episode 192 this coming Monday with Bernard Riley. Mm-hmm. The reason for that largely is because of a level of frustration with the inability to have frank conversation, and maybe even a tense conversation at time. There's just not these sort of opportunities that you would expect to have that conversation. This whole diversity stuff, I've talked to folks about this frequently. Diversity and inclusion is nothing but a repackaging of affirmative action. Yes. Except for with one important difference. With affirmative action, the original purpose was laser focused at Black men. It was laser focused at Black men. That was the original purpose of affirmative action. But because of Title IX, women were also written in as minorities. So the effect of that was that 84% of the recipients of affirmative action were white women. Okay. So yes. when you hear some of these talking points on the conservative side, where they'll say, hey, everybody should be, it shouldn't matter what color the people are, X, Y, and Z, blah, blah, blah. It's all just talking points, because by the statistics, you're only talking about 16% of actual minorities getting in there. And of that, since Title IX was put in place, that 16 for Black men is probably more like 5 or 6%. Okay. So that's the thing with affirmative action. With diversity and inclusion, what they've done is they never had the initial purpose to specifically serve Black men. So now they can go for the gusto. They can go for the gusto. They can go for exactly what it is that they want to do, which is to bypass us. It's to bypass us. It is to use, the atrocities, the mangling of the black male body as a catalyst to serve the agenda that they actually have. Right. So now they don't even have to talk about black men. Now they don't even have to say to even look. I'll tell you, man, I've had these meetings with administrators, with colleagues, with other folks about the fact that there are 20,000 fewer black men in the academy than black females. Almost nobody even knows that. And I'm talking about people that are in leadership positions within diversity and inclusion. They don't even know that.
Let's take it. As I told you in the back, because I want people to debate you now. As I told you in the back, Monday I have a panel. Well, really, it's just one person. I have Obsidian coming on, and the biggest issue we're talking about is the illiteracy rate and the fact that no one wants to deal with this issue. For me, I want to be a solution-oriented platform, but I want everybody to also understand the seriousness of what we're dealing with.
Yeah.
Because I'm like you. I got a beautiful black woman. I love my black woman. I come from a black mother. I got a black father. I come from a beautiful black community. I love my black community. It's a shame that I got to give a resume of everybody I love that look like me in order for me to even have the freedom, because my black ass went to the military so that they can have freedom, but I don't have it.
Right.
And the sad part is I got young black men, my son, 23, and others, that I got to now be able to say how we're going to make it, how we're going to survive. And it's a shame I got to go through all that before I can even say what I need to say.
Yeah.
Sorry
about that. That was a little premature. I touched the button before I intended to.
Oh,
I do want to talk about.
Go ahead.
I do want. Yeah. Okay.
Let's go.
I do want to talk on this issue, black boys and what's happening in the school system. Okay. Now look, there has been a feminization of our education system.
Let's talk about it.
Okay. And it's not like this is a happenstance. This is something that was purposeful. I don't know if people know this, but 93% of the high school valedictorians and class presidents, 93% are female. 93%. Now, this is not just for black folks. This is for everybody. 93% are female. Now, we know that women tend to learn a certain way. Women can sit down, your girls can sit down and they can focus and there's no problem with sitting down, reading a book and all that kind of stuff. That's not the way that boys learn. It is not the way that boys learn. Boys do not learn that way. Boys want to be more physical. They want to be more hands-on. And so as those hands-on elements of school, I mean, I challenge you to find a shop class even in high schools now. Right. I mean, there used to be the shop class, woodworking classes, or like this. What we need to do is we need to bring a lot of those kind of classes back. The hands-on type of approach. Now, look, you're talking to somebody that I did not, I did school because I had to do school. I'm right. Actually, but I didn't really like school per se. I did it because I knew that I had to perform. In order for me to do music, I had to perform. My dad was not messing around. I had to have a certain GPA or else he was not going to allow me to to play my instrument. That's pretty much
Right.
how that worked.
Right.
But a lot of us don't have, not only do we not have a dad that is insisting that you do this and do it well,
Mhm.
but we don't have that other thing that we really want to be doing, and then that being used as leverage to make sure that we're staying on the sort of straight and narrow, as it were. And I think that's part of the advantage that I had, is because I had something that I wanted to do, and my dad knew that, and so he could leverage that. He could use that as a carrot to cause me to walk down a certain path. But
Right.
that's not what's happening now. My son is in private school.
Okay.
And if I have to flip burgers on the weekends to keep him in private school, that's what I'll do. Because what's going on in the public schools, it's not just devastating with respect to reading levels, mathematics comprehension levels. It's not just devastating with respect to that. It's also devastating with respect to identity, because they are monkeying around with this gender stuff.
Yeah.
They are monkeying around with this stuff. In the school I have him in, he's in a Catholic school. They don't play that stuff over there.
Yeah.
They don't play that.
Help me with two things. I'm about solutions. So my first question is going to be, what can I do to help my people better that I'm not doing? Just what you see, or just something I should be doing?
Well, I don't know if I want to hyper personalize it. I could say something about, I think, what we as Black men just,
okay.
So one of the issues is that there's this quote unquote generational gap. Okay. And it's like the young folks, they have their way, so what is it, like the millennials, the zennials, they have their thing, what am I? I'm Generation X.
Yeah.
And then you got the boomers and all like this. So there's these gaps, and those gaps are kind of kept alive because there's a lack of folks that are willing to just have conversations.
Right.
I'm willing to go and talk to anybody. I don't care what your perspective is. And I don't care if I get seen with you. And you know what? Whoever it is I'm talking to, they could be using all kind of colorful language. They could be saying all kind of crude kind of stuff. I mean, that's fine. I'm not offended by that.
Right.
I understand that sometimes folks, they just talk the way they talk.
Right.
Okay. I mean, I do a panel show with Amir every week.
Right.
Okay. And Ramil, he's more of an edgy kind of a street kind of guy. That's his thing. But he's also really smart, and he knows a lot of stuff.
Right. And
so we have found ways to collaborate, though we don't come from the same sort of, we're not the same kind of guy per se. Right. So one thing that I like to see is in this space is, as much as possible, is to try to collaborate with folks, even if it might not even seem like it's a logical person to collaborate with. I've collaborated with Chantel Simone, for instance. I've collaborated with I've collaborated with a bunch of folks in the space. Mr. Palmer. That's probably, to some people, that may seem like an unusual sort of combination of folks. But we get together on, I agree with, and maybe I wouldn't say it the way that he says it, but I agree with what it is that he's doing and the points that he's making about child support and how devastating it is and how it's being weaponized against Black men. And so I think the more we can get together, have meaningful conversations, even with folks that are not necessarily from where we're from or have the same perspective. One thing I find very interesting, so they were trying to out me like I said in the Elle magazine article. One thing I think is interesting with the way that people think. When I was, I told you I was, the whole street evangelism thing, and I think we called that ministry the lightning of the thunder. Of course, that's a quote from the Bible, right? There's a phrase in there. So the lightning of the thunder ministries, right? I remember one time we were actually standing outside of a strip club. We were standing outside of a strip club, and we were asking people as they left the strip club, what do you think about the Bible? So I'm not afraid to go where people are.
Right.
And isn't that what Jesus did, right? Jesus went, he didn't care who he got seen with.
Right.
It didn't matter. But for some reason, we have like totally gotten that thing screwed up. Now we're concerned if somebody sees us with this person or sees us with that person, or we're all scared of getting canceled and all like this. And it's like, look, I'm here for the smoke. And you know what? The money is where the controversy is. So I hope people know that if they think they're going to cancel me, all they're going to do is just make me rich. Let's go.
Let's make it happen. Well, I'm going to do this. Dr. Thunder, I am going to put down the chat, and let's see who wants to come, add to the conversation, ask questions, the whole nine, even give a commentary as to everything they have heard. I'm thanking you for your time. You have definitely dropped knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. Like I said, Obsidian will be here Monday. If you want to come back, I'm not even going to keep Obsidian long. I want people just to hear what Obsidian has to say when it comes to the literacy rate. Because my attitude is we're going to present all of the truth, whether you want to accept it or not.
And I can give you another probably about 10 minutes. So folks that want to come up now.
Yep. I've dropped the link in the chat. Please make sure you uncam in the back if you want to be on the panel. So I know who you are, but I'm not going to keep them long. So, come in and let's go. Here we go. She says, I like that. Although there is a clear contrast between you and Ramel, you're able to combat through the topics.
Comb through topics. Yeah.
Comb through topics. What did I say? Oh, combat. I said comb through. Yeah.
Yeah, and hey, thanks for all the support. She's been all on my channel. When I do a live stream, she always pops up and is always supportive. Thank you.
Good. All right. Well, I don't see anyone. Vaughn, you might as well say the back is closed. I don't see no one coming to the back. I think this has been an awesome live. And again, I thank you so much for coming and for dropping all the knowledge, wisdom, and jewels. And definitely going to have you back again because we gotta figure something out. We gotta figure something out.
Yeah, and the beauty of conversation is such that no solution can take place without conversation. So
Correct.
it's the gateway. It is the gateway to any sort of solution. And oftentimes, just having the conversation can be its own sort of relief. It can be cathartic, and it can be, just being able to express ideas and hear something from someone else's perspective. It also helps you to humanize other people, right? Because if we're just sort of ninja watching, and people are saying whatever they're saying. And then we can say, we can think or say whatever we want to say about what we think their motives are. It's different when you actually, if you're open, when you actually, talk to them. a whole different, it's a whole different perspective, a whole different thing is possible. So
Absolutely.
that's what I would like to see more of in this space.
Sounds good. And we're going to make that happen. Ladies and gentlemen, in the chat, those listening, I want to thank you once again for coming here to Uncle Stu's studio, hanging out with Uncle Stu and Dr. Thunder. I hope you got some knowledge, some wisdom, some understanding. If you have any questions, you can either go to Dr. Thunder's page or you can hit me up in the comment section, email, or IG. I will respond. Dr. Thunder, just hold on as I shut down this broadcast. So for all of y'all, love you. Peace.